Good evening and welcome to the Jed Foundation Giving Tuesday event, an evening with Jed storytellers. I'm Hunter McGrady and I'm your host. This show tonight will be a little over an hour long and will be followed by a reception and celebration in the lobby. Tonight we have 5 amazing Jed storytellers here to share their personal stories. Covering a broad range of lived experience. They've all been trained by the Moth Community Program, a program training which I've completed myself, and it's really helped me communicate my story in order to help others. Storytelling is an important component in Jed's mission to protect mental health and prevent suicide for our nation's teens and young adults. It's important because when we share stories, we're letting others know that we're not alone and their experiences and their challenges. Jed's mission is very close to my heart, having battled depression and an eating disorder, and at a size 2 at 16 years old, being rejected for being too big for the modeling industry. And now, being a size 16, being the curviest model to ever grace Sports Illustrated magazine. Thank you. I found my worth and knew that I was needed in this world. Tonight is about Jed thanking all of you for your support and partnership this year. And it's all about continuing to support Jed in their critical work. Speaking of support, you can text Jed to 50555 to give right now. We also have a special feature from the new show, Mortified, where storytellers share their embarrassing teenage diaries in front of an audience of total strangers. But first, Taylor Phelan is a songwriter, singer, and indie rock artist who was a favorite contestant on the 7th season of NBC's hit reality show, The Voice, and experienced that he revealed his tremendous talent as a solo artist, which you're about to witness right now. Here's Taylor.
Waves are breaking, you're holding my head on the water, the hungry seabed, calling for my bones, the water's getting fed, oh. And this wind is howling, it's pulling me out into the open and cutting me deep, tearing me from home, I'm tired on my feet, oh. And these days too much for whiskey or beer. I've tried to make it out, but I only tend to spiral down. Can I get a little help for rise? Or are we all just left to daydream? Some help for rise? Or are you worth only what you bring? I can tell you just how I feel. It only matters if we'll make a deal. Some help for us, oh, some help for us, oh. And this cave is housing the shadows in the deep are around me, and I don't even know where else to go. There's no light to see, oh. And this fire is growing, it's drawing me into its glow. In this smoke, I can't even breathe, I'm choking and weak, oh. And these days are too much for whiskey or beer. I've tried to make it out, but I only tend to spiral down. Can I get a little help for us? Or are we all just left to daydream? Some help for us? Or are you worth only what you bring? I can tell you just how I feel. It only matters if we'll make a deal. Some help for us, oh. Some help for us, oh. Thank you so much. Dave is coming out. He's actually going to tell us a story now. Dave, I know, I'm sorry. I didn't set you up very well. This is my new friend, Dave, everyone. Give it up for Dave. Thanks so much.
I couldn't believe it when I got the call. Danny's my best friend. We met each other in college. I was in the weight room getting together for a pre-basketball workout, and there he was. He's a 6'5", brawly kind of dude. He had 65-pound dumbbells in his hands, and he was just swinging them, like they were 25 pounds, and it was just ridiculous. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And a friend of mine was like, yeah, he plays with us. He's ridiculous. And from then on, he introduced me to Denny, and we were just best friends. We were inseparable. We were in school, and it was senior year, and we got a dog. Like, the dog was the best move we ever made. It was a puppy. It was a pit bull puppy, and it was called Snoop. I remember Snoop. Snoop's my guy. Snoop, I love Snoop. Because Snoop rounded out our trifecta. Like, we played basketball, we were seniors, and we had a puppy. That guarantees you are absolutely cool with the ladies. If you lose at that point, you gotta like work some things out. But then I got that call. It was Danny's mom. She was crying uncontrollably, and all she could say was, "He's gone, Dave, he's gone. Danny took his whole life." And at that moment, my entire world collapsed. Because for me, Danny wasn't just a regular friend. He was my best friend. We used to call him Super because we called him Superman. Not because of his physique, obviously, but he was just there for everyone. Danny had a smile that could light up a room and a personality that was priceless. Like, no matter where Danny was, he was making friends. So that news was just, it was completely earth-shattering. And then I remember it was me, Omar, Murph, Pierre, the usual suspects we hang out with in college. Craig, I can't forget Craig because I love Craig. And we were all hanging out doing our normal thing, Danny. But there was a big difference. I'm walking down the hallway. I remember it has red carpet. This red carpet kind of stood out to me. And as I'm walking down this hallway, I get about halfway there, and I dart back. I spill out of the door and out of the funeral home and dropped right down onto my knees and started to cry. Omar came outside of the funeral home and picked me up off the floor and said, "Dave, we could take this walk together." And I was like, "No, this is a walk I got to take on my own." I gathered my things, got myself together, walked back into the funeral home, back into this hallway, the longest hallway in the world, I'm telling you. Red carpet. It's like a horror movie, just lights flickering. Now in hindsight, it's ridiculous. And I'm walking down this hallway. I'm walking. I make a left, I make a right, and boom. It was Danny. In a casket, cold, and it was the first time I've seen him since I saw him alive. I remember just wanting to just touch him, see what he felt like. He was cold. He was dressed in the clothes that he loved to wear with a Superman emblem on his chest. And I was just crushed. I was devastated. Fast forward about a year and a half, maybe even 2. I'm beating myself up. It's like probably one of the worst 2 years of my life. And I just can't get over it. I can't get over what happened, how it happened, how I didn't see it happening. Because you see, Danny, for me, he was always kind of like a cheerleader for me. I'm a musician, and at the time, our band was going through an upswing. And in that upswing, it was one of the first major tours we did. We was touring with the Gym Class Heroes at the time. And I was having a hard time adjusting to tour life. Like, oh, wow, you're in a bag, you're in a different city every day, living out of a hotel, you're eating trash food, it's whatever it is. And Danny was always like, hey, you got this, you got this. Me wanting to come home, he's like, trust me, you got this, there's no way. When we pulled into New York, he came out to the New York show, biggest rager, like literally big 6'4" dude with a oxymoron shirt on, that's the name of our band, raging, blocking all the little girls in the front, being a jerk. But I loved him for that because he always made me feel and always believed that I was good enough, even when I didn't believe I was good enough. He was an awesome guy in that kind of way. So now I'm off tour, a few years go by, and I'm beating myself up like, why? The whole time I was on tour, Danny was there for me, and I just could not be his Superman. I could not see what he was doing. Was I just so self-absorbed? Was my life that much better than his in my mind, or was I just being a big baby about what was going on, living the greatest moment of my life, and he's living the worst of his life? And I could not notice, what kind of friend am I? Now I'm at my parents' house, and I'm just going through some bunch of old things that was in my room, and there was a CD. And I remember this CD, and this CD has significant importance because this CD, Danny gave it to me the very last time I saw him living. He came over, I was packing up, getting ready to go to tour, and he came over and he gave me the CD. He said, yo, you gotta check the CD, D, this thing is the greatest, it's gonna change your life. And I was like, this CD's gonna change my life? I said, Danny, I got like 5 loads of laundry to do. If you help me, that's gonna change my life. And so I kind of like ignored the CD, and now finding this years later, that CD was a Buddhism CD. And in that CD that Danny gave me, it made me become a Buddhist. I dove in, I started understanding suffering, attachment to certain things, and I dove into myself and learned things about myself eternally that I never knew before. And it was cool because Danny knew what he was doing. He knew he was going to leave at some point because his thing was always saying in hindsight, like, hey, this realm's done for me. He spoke in a lot of metaphors, so I've had enough of this realm. And he knew he was leaving this realm, so he gave me something to hold on to, so he was still being my Superman, even though he knew he was going to be gone. So even with that is, even though Danny turned out to be his own kryptonite, he will always and forever be my Superman. Thank you.
I've searched high and low for my place in this world. And at age 36, I thought I'd find it here at a fertility clinic. You see, maybe creating a life, that was like my ultimate ticket in to feeling like I belonged, to feeling like I was normal, to feeling like I was doing right in this world by becoming a mother. And so I welcomed the fertility clinic visits day in and day out, morning after every morning, see whether or not I was fertile. And 4 weeks of this passed by, and finally the doctor gives us the green light. She hands me a cocktail full of meds and artificial hormones, and she says to me, go forth and procreate. And so my husband and I do the best we can that weekend. And it will take us 2 weeks to figure out whether or not we've been successful. 2 weeks. What could possibly go wrong in 2 weeks except everything does go wrong? Maybe it was the artificial hormones or something beyond my control, but the chemistry in my brain begins to switch and the thoughts and moods begin to falter. You see, I was diagnosed once with borderline personality disorder and depression. And although I've been in remission for about a year, the symptoms quickly flooded back in. The thoughts were disturbing. I'd look down at subway tracks for salvation, and I'd look up to the beams to see whether or not they'd hold my weight. I knew I was clinically depressed, but I didn't know I was actively suicidal. And so I did the next best thing, the most rational thing I could possibly think of. I checked myself into the partial hospitalization program. It is there I meet Kristen, a social worker. We've been working a couple days now to figure out what's been going on. We both know what's at stake here. Pregnant, I have 9 more months to figure this all out. I promised her that. but not pregnant. I was running out of time. And one day we get a phone call on the cell phone, and it's the fertility clinic. The nurse on the other end of the line, she says, "Amanda, I'm sorry, but the pregnancy results came back negative." And I hang up the phone and I look long, forlorn way. And I say to Kristen, how foolish I have been to think that a baby would save my life, would save me from myself. How foolish. And Kristen says to me, she says, "Amanda, it's okay to be foolish. It's okay to have your heart break. Maybe you wanted this more than you thought you believed to have it. And I'm heartbroken too. But most of all, I'm worried about you. I can't let you go home tonight. We have to admit you into the inpatient unit." And she is right to be worried, and I don't fight her. I allow things to happen. And I stay the night at the psychiatric emergency room with my scrubs and a journal to keep me company. And the following day, I'm wheeled up to the 11th floor of the hospital, and it is there where the 2 doctors meet me for intake. This one psychiatrist with the beard and the glasses, he says to me, "What's in your journal?" And I say to him, "Well, I kind of know what you're asking for. You're asking for my goodbye letters." And I read them one by one out loud until I get to my parents, where I say how much I wish just to make you proud and how sorry I am that I'm a big disappointment. I really wish I could do right by you guys, but maybe I'm not meant for this world. And tears start to fall down my cheeks and my nails start to dig deep into my palms. I shake uncontrollably, and I realize, or I think to myself, I'm like dying here. I'm sick, and maybe this is like a fatal disease that I have. And so I say to them, I want to live. It's just, I know I'm dying. And the 2 psychiatrists, they look at each other, and finally one says to me, "So you want to live?" I said, "Didn't you hear me? I'm dying here." But a small crack, a little light opens into this big abyss that I was living in. And I realized I did want to live. I just didn't know how. And so I spent the next 4 weeks in the hospital learning how to live again, learning to live with my sadness and my confusion and my pain and even my hopes and my dreams. And as the medication starts to kick in, I too become transparent to the doctors, and I talk more to them. As winter turns into spring, and I can see from through the double pane windows, the buds begin to bloom, I too realize that I can begin again. As I complete my stint at the psychiatric hospital, I do begin again. I think maybe, having a baby is not in our cards, and I no longer go to the fertility clinic. I quit my job of 11 years and go back to school. I have a new psychiatrist, but most of all, I have a new therapist who understands me, who sees me for who I am, even though I cannot see myself. And so I start to relax into that person she sees in me. And a year passes by, and unbeknownst to me and my husband, we become pregnant. Little Quentin is born 2 months early, eager to see his parents. And as he grows and watches and comes towards me, and I watch him embrace me and hug me with all his might, I realize that my son did not save me. He allowed me to see myself and embrace myself for who I am. Because I have to love him, I've learned to love myself, because he teaches me that every day. Thank you.
I'm on a red carpet in Los Angeles in February, and I am sweating. And it's not because it's all that hot out. It's actually 80 degrees, very comfortable. But for people like me, this is not easy. This red carpet was at the Grammys, and when I say people like me, 30 years ago I was diagnosed bipolar 2 with anxiety. And the perfect job for someone who's constantly anxious, high-strung, and depressed half of the time is, of course, to be a publicist. So that's what I became. I'm a publicist on the Grammy red carpet, waiting for a band that I have worked with for many years. Actually, 6 years we've been to the Grammys, and not one of them have they won. So our routine at the Grammys, you only see 15% of the Grammys that are presented every year on the telecast. There's a pre-telecast Grammy event, which is in an adjacent auditorium to the one you see on television. It's not really as nice. There's about 3 hours of awards given out. Your eyes totally glaze over if you sit there for more than a half hour. Fortunately, the Hard Rock Grammys, which were the ones that I was going there for, were usually among the last given out. So our routine every year would be I would go to the red carpet an hour earlier, talk to all the press, see who wanted to talk to the band. Then we would go to the pre-telecast, sit on uncomfortable folding chairs, and talk to all of our friends. We'd all lose, and then we'd go to the red carpet, fight to get some interviews to do, and I would always tell my clients, you better be Johnny on the spot to get those interviews done, because the real famous people are coming later. And then I would put them in the auditorium and leave. And that was actually my favorite part of the night, when I got to leave. So this year, we all get there, and we're sitting on our uncomfortable folding chairs and talking to each other. We barely heard our category come up. So we turn around, and we're listening to them announce the nominees, half of which they couldn't even pronounce. And we won. And we had no idea what to do next. So I kind of said, I think we should go up there maybe, I don't know. So we had an entourage of about 15 people, and of course it's like herding cats. So I'm trying to get everyone in line to walk down. And when you win, I found out, you do a completely different thing than we'd done every year before. You go backstage, and it's a green carpet with these heavy green curtains. And my job is to take the line of 15 people behind me, take the ones that people actually want to talk to, and open the curtain, send them in, and have them get their picture taken. They come out, and then we go to the next one, and I open it up, and it's a press conference. I'm like freaking out because they're not all that bright, and I don't know what they're gonna say. So finally, they get their chance, and people say to them, who do you have to thank? Who do you owe this to? And they talked about their mom and Jesus and their 4th grade teacher and the guy who drove them that morning. And I'm standing right there, and they did not mention me. As I'm trying to keep their girlfriends out of the room and the record producer and everyone in line, I'm feeling, should I be okay with not being thanked? And that's the thing about being bipolar and being as self-aware as I am. I have to ask myself a lot of questions. Is it okay to feel that way about this? So I said, well, I don't know if it's okay, but it is the way I feel, and I do have to deal with it. So I send them into the auditorium, and they can't possibly know how I feel. They don't know my circumstances. They don't know how hard I've worked and how many relationships I've killed to get them here. So I send them on their way, and as I'm walking out to my car, about to enjoy the best part, it being over, I say to myself, is it all right to expect gratitude? Well, probably not. I probably have to have that gratitude come from within me. So my gratitude and my present to myself was going back to the hotel, getting in bed, and ordering a hamburger and watching the awards on TV. Thank you.
Please give it up for Dave, Amanda, and Jamie one more time for their courage for sharing their stories. Next up is Mortified, which can be heard on This American Life and All Things Considered. Mortified produces podcasts, books, documentaries, and stage shows held worldwide. Mortified's latest book, My Mortified Life, a guide journal, is packed with hilarious and thought-provoking questions to help you learn from your awkward past. It's an amazing gift for anyone who loves to journal, and you can check it out at getmortified.com. Mortified also has a TV series coming to Netflix in February, and we have one of the featured storytellers here tonight. His name is Will Nolan, and he hails from Atlanta, Georgia, but has been in NYC since graduating Wake Forest University. For almost 15 years, Will has been a part of the Mortified family, reading from his elementary school diary in LA, NYC, Brooklyn, and Chicago, and even has his piece animated. He is also proud to be one of the contributors to the first Mortified book. When he's not reliving his humiliating past in front of people, Will performs as Leola, a 72-year-old redneck lesbian preaching the gospel according to Kelly Clarkson, to sold-out audiences across the country. He is a sketch comic, playwright, and proud member of the Dramatists Guild. He and his husband lived in New Jersey with their 11-year-old son. Please give it up and welcome Will Nolan.
Like the walk of shame. Hi, I'm Will. And growing up in Atlanta in the late 70s and 80s, I was the kind of nerd other nerds felt comfortable making fun of. Maybe it was because of the Opie Taylor, Richie Cunningham, sunburst hair. I also, shortly after this, I got my first prescription for a pair of pecan, oversized Charles Nelson Riley-esque glasses that matched my mom's. So all of this helped me draw the attention of the nerd bully in our grade, Drake. And my only place of solace was my bedroom. So I would come home from school and I would come home from school and quietly shut my bedroom door. I would turn on my desk lamp that had a black bulb in it that my mom didn't know about so that my Vanna White poster on my ceiling would glow because I had really nice wallpaper that I didn't want to mess up. And then I would take my diary and I would just blast my Amy Grant cassettes. Because in the words of Charlie Brown's little sister Sally, all I wanted is what was coming to me. All I wanted was my fair share. The Diary of William Patrick Nolan Jr., April 10th, 1982, 11 years old. I hate Drake Henderson. I hate him with every bone in my body. I hate him. He is the worst curse ever. I'm going to write it, but I may throw it away because if my mom and dad find it, I'll be sent away. I don't know where. They never tell me that part. But I'm so mad it's worth risking. Drake Henderson is a motherfucking ass shithole. That's the worst curse ever, and he is. I hate Drake Henderson, and I want him to burn in a really slow way that hurts a lot. 'Cause he sucks is why. Today, we were playing in a tree, and he tied me to the tree, and he took my shoes. He took my shoes. I'm so mad my pencil is shaking. He took my shoes and threw them in the street. I couldn't get out of the tree, and he went home. I finally got myself untied and fell in a puddle. My shoes are okay. But so I told my mom what happened, and she's in therapy and thinks she knows it all, which she doesn't, Because instead of being mad at Drake, she told me I should have said he made me angry. I said, what? And I told her he was a fucker. I did. She was mad, but I didn't have to sit in the no fun chair. She told me that I had to call Drake and tell him how I feel because it's healthy, and it's what she does with my dad now. But she does it in the garage so we don't see her express herself. She promised it would make me feel better. And she's in group therapy, so she knows. I called Drake and I said, Drake, it's Will. He said, so? I said, I want you to know that you made me very angry today when you tied me to the tree and took my shoes. He laughed for a long time and hung up the phone. I told my mom, and she said it was time for dinner. I'm never eating dinner again, ever. That was it. So the little epilogue to my one diary entry in my preteen years was that obviously I ate dinner eventually, but I waited a good 2 to 4 minutes before I came down that night because me being late when punctuality was such a thing was clearly a sign of my protest. And my mom quit group therapy afterwards because she realized it was more effective to express herself in the house with us around a lot. As for Drake, I totally lost track. He went off to Catholic school shortly thereafter, and he's not on the social media when I look up, so I like to think he's probably in prison. As for me, I married an amazing man. We've been together 20 years. Thank you. We've been married multiple times as it became legal in different places. And we have a fabulous 11-year-old son who loves Broadway show tunes almost as much as he loves a pair of high heels. And he's the most amazing, fierce, brave kid I know. And he's the same age I was when I wrote this. And I just wish that I could have met a kid like that when I was growing up. And earlier this year, he was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And I'm so blessed and it feels so serendipitous to meet an organization like Jed, just as we are entering an age where we really need to start filling up his toolbox with all that he's going to need to move forward. Because it's a scary world, and I think, especially recently, a lot of us have felt like we've been tied to a tree and had our shoes taken from us. But the tide's shifting, and I think that there is a hope that's coming forward now. I think that hashtags are becoming movements, that people are braver and are starting to share their stories and use their voice. And I think soon, nerds are going to win. Thank you.
Wow, I'm going to watch Mortified, right? Thank you, Will. Up next, we have our last two Jed storytellers, Carly and Arthur, and then Jed's CEO, John McPhee, is going to come up and share a sneak preview of a brand new Jed Help Giving initiative, and Taylor is going to treat us to some more music to close the show. Here's Carly.
There I was, on the bank of a turquoise river in the middle of the Panamanian jungle, watching a monkey swing from the trees. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, business as usual. A few months earlier, I had quit my job as an executive editor at the Huffington Post to go on a solo Latin American adventure. While I was backpacking, a good friend of mine called me up to see if I'd be interested in coming down to his eco-village in Panama and opening up a media school. I jumped at the chance. I got on the first plane that I could. I was thrilled. And for my first few months in Panama, I was happier than I had ever been in my life. I was absolutely euphoric. I was staying up night after night, not sleeping, filling pages upon pages of my journals with ideas and action plans to change the world. I was drinking rum out of the inside of a passion fruit, and I was bathing in that turquoise river, and I was spending my nights sleeping underneath a palm leaf thatch hut roof. I was happier than I'd ever been. And that was a really big deal to me because I've struggled with major depression for pretty much my entire adult life. This isn't just regular run-of-the-mill depression. This is the kind of depression that knocks you over, puts you out in bed for days upon end, an endless voice in your head telling you you're never good enough, smart enough, interesting enough, that you'll never amount to anything. But for the first time in my life, that voice was gone. I was just purely happy. I had begun to think that maybe being in Panama had cured me. Maybe my depression was gone for good. So one day I took out my bottle of antidepressants and I looked at it and I thought, maybe I don't need you guys anymore. Taking the antidepressants had become a really big hassle. Friends and family would have to smuggle them down to Latin America for me because they didn't manufacture my brand down there. And the side effects were awful. I was tired and cranky and feeling really lethargic. So I thought it would be great if I didn't have to take these, and now that I'm cured, I don't need them. So I threw them in the garbage, and they were gone. And for the first few weeks, I was happy as ever. The euphoria remained. And then slowly but surely, my depression started to creep back in. We have a saying we tell students in the jungle when things start to get tough, and that saying is to toughen the fuck up. We tell them to toughen the fuck up if they find a family of ants in their cereal bowl. We tell them to toughen the fuck up if they're too afraid to use a machete to hack banana leaves. We tell them to toughen the fuck up if it rains so much that they're stuck in their tents for an entire day. So when my depression came back, I took one look in the mirror and I said, Carly, you are gonna toughen the fuck up. I vowed not to tell anybody what I was feeling. I thought the less I thought about it, the less I would feel it. So I completely suppressed it, and that made it grow larger than ever. But still, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone when I was walking on a cobblestone street and my shoe broke and I fell down and collapsed to the ground crying. I didn't tell anyone when I stayed in bed for an entire day, not talking to anyone or eating anything. I didn't tell anyone when I was cleaning the bathroom floor and I became so overwhelmed with the task that I curled up into a ball in the shower and just sat there for an hour. I was so alone and I was desperate for help, but I wasn't ready to ask for it. And so one day I was sitting in the jungle feeling worse than ever. The voice in my head has grown louder than ever, telling me I'm a total failure, telling me I don't deserve to be in Panama, telling me I might be better off dead, when I see a plastic bag billowing around in the wind. And I looked at it and I thought, you know, maybe I would be better off dead. Maybe I could silence this voice in my head once and for all. I could take this bag, put it over my head, stop breathing, and that would be it. It would all be over. And then my problems would be solved. So I grabbed the bag, I ran into my tent, I sat down on the ground, and I just looked at it. And I never had felt more alone in my life. I started to cry. I watched my tears fall into the bag, sort of plopping there one by one. And as I looked at the bag, that's when I realized it was time to ask for help. So I exited my tent, I found my first coworker I could find, and I said, I need to get on the first plane to the United States. I need to get out of here. I needed to be in a place where there were resources and tools to actually take care of me and to address my illness head on. And so we packed up everything I owned into my big hiking backpack and we swung it into the back of the truck and we drove the 4x4 up the long and bumpy journey up the mountain and out of the jungle. At the top of the mountain, I got out of the truck and I looked down at the jungle canopy below and I felt like such a big failure. Everything I had built down there was for nothing. I was leaving it all behind. Depression had gotten the better of me. I went home and I've been back in the United States for a little over a year now, and I did end up getting the help that I needed. And I've learned that depression is not the kind of thing that you can just cure. But if you ask for help, with the right resources and tools, it is the kind of thing that you can live with. And not only live with, but lead an empowering lifestyle. So now I look back on my time in Panama, and I don't think of it as a failure. I think I was a success. Because my version of toughening the fuck up was asking for help when I needed it. Thank you.
I'm staring at a photo of my friend Blake King on my computer. I'm trying to comprehend what I'm reading. It's not his Facebook profile, it's not an Instagram post, and it's not his LinkedIn. It's his obituary. Blake was one of my closest friends in college. He was this beacon of light and positivity. And I had thought that we had grown apart over the years, as friends sometimes do, and I had found out that instead he had taken his own life. And I just couldn't understand it. As I sat there sobbing in disbelief, it actually catapulted me back to my first run-in with suicide, years before. I just started college, and I was back home over break at my mom's house, where my little brother Galen was in high school. Our parents had been going through a really messy divorce, and I knew that he was really struggling. He was overweight. He was getting bullied at school. I mean, our parents named him Galen. They didn't do him a whole lot of favors. And I knew that he was having a tough time. When I got down there, as my little brother, he used to always be in my business. Very annoying, very little brothery. We're 6 years apart, so it was always too much distance to really be that close when we were kids. But this time was different. He wasn't as annoying, which to me was actually a red flag. It meant that he wasn't as engaged. And he felt a little withdrawn, he felt a little distant. I knew he was hurting, but I didn't know how much. And my family's not a family where we go and talk about our feelings and share our innermost emotions. We're very independent. We very much value our privacy. You solve your own problems. We were making our own dinners by 12, doing our own laundry by 13. It just wasn't something you talked about. So I did something that in our family actually amounts to treason. When my mom and little brother were out one day, I broke into my brother's computer, looking for something to help me understand why he felt different, because I couldn't figure it out. And I searched through his files, through the hidden folders, through the contents of the files, and I finally found a suicide note. And I sat there reading these words from my little brother about how he was unloved and how he was alone, how the world would be better off without him, how there was no point. And I was crushed. I was guilty. I was ashamed. Here I was up at college, fleeing this madness, and here was my little brother dealing with it all on his own. And I didn't know what to do. So I did the only thing that I do know what to do. I talked to somebody else. I ended up talking to a child psychologist that day who told me that I had to tell my brother that I loved him, that I would miss him if he was gone, and I had to confront him directly and ask him whether he had plans to take his own life. In a family where you don't really share your emotions, confronting someone like that is almost a fate worse than death. And the next day I had my opportunity when our mom was out. I mustered up my courage. I was incredibly uncomfortable. I was sweating. My heart was beating. And I walked down the stairs, and I remember walking down to our landing. I remember walking down the second set of stairs, and the third step always creaked when you went down. And so it creaked under my foot, and I was like, shit, he knows I'm coming. And I came around the corner, and the door was ajar, and I knocked on it, and I stepped in. And I said, hey, Galen, do you have a minute? I want to talk about something. And immediately, he knew something was up, because this was probably the first time in my life I'd actually asked him to talk about anything. And so he put his mental dukes up, and he said, yeah, what do you want to talk about? And the one rule in our family was always be honest. You can always be forgiven for what you do so long as you tell the truth. And so I looked him in the eyes and I said, Galen, I went through your computer and I found a suicide note and I want to talk to you about it. And he was furious. He started yelling at me. You invaded my privacy. How dare you go through my things? What's wrong with you? Why did you do this to me? And I took my beating. I sat. I took it. I listened. And I just waited. And when he finally stopped, I said, Galen, I'm sorry. But I have to tell you that I love you very much. And I would miss you so much if you were gone. And I have to ask you, do you have any plans to take your own life? And he said, no. And we're not the family to talk about this stuff, so Galen and I didn't revisit that conversation for a long time. In fact, not until I actually found out about Blake. And I called Galen up 2 days later, and I said, Galen, you remember that time I came down to your bedroom when you were in high school, and I confronted you about your suicide? And he goes, oh, you mean the time you invaded my privacy and looked at my things? Yeah. I do remember that. I was like, well, I've heard it both ways, but okay. I said, Galen, I think we have a story to tell. And I think we need to get out there and tell people what we've been through. And so through a series of events, we ended up in an NPR interview with Bill Radke back in Seattle. And I remember going to the studio with Galen. We were both really excited. We'd never been on the radio before. I remember walking in, we got to meet the producer. We sat down in the chairs, and Bill Radke's over here, and Galen's across from me. They've got the really cool old-timey microphones, and the on-air sign is on, and we're like really having a great time. I'm looking over at Galen. He's got his blazer on, because I told him to dress nice because we were getting a photo taken of us. And I remember Bill Radke looking at Galen, and he said, Galen, what did it mean to you when your brother told you that he loved you, told you that you would be missed, and asked you if you had plans to take your own life? It was at this moment that I realized I had never actually asked Galen what it meant to him that day and what I had done. So I had no idea what he was going to say. And in front of Bill and in front of the millions of listeners, he said, it meant a lot, Bill, because one of the biggest things I was struggling with was feeling that I wasn't valued, that nobody was paying attention, that nobody cared about me. And here he was telling me, my brother telling me that he loved me. And it also made me confront my own thoughts about suicide. Was I really at the stage where I was planning my own death, or was I really just idolizing it? And it was something that I was thinking might be an answer for the pain in my life. I remember looking at him and thinking, wow, there were all these pieces in his life that were important for him to come out of where he was and the situation he was in, and I was one of those pieces. And it was at that moment that I realized you don't actually have to do something huge to make an enormous difference. You just have to do what you feel is right. Thank you.
All right, so what did you think of the storytellers? All right? Okay, so what's going to happen now is I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jed and what we have going on, in the coming months going into 2018. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of a new campaign that we have. And then we're going to listen to some music, and then we're going to go celebrate and have a party, right? Because those of you who've been to our events before know we like to have a good time. So that's coming within minutes. My name is John McPhee. I'm the executive director of Jed. I think I know most people who are here. And very quickly, as I think most of you know, our mission is about protecting the emotional health and preventing suicide for teens and young adults. And we do that work in three ways. One is through campaigns and communication programs to teens and young adults and the people around them to really say, hey, it's okay not to be okay. We're all going to struggle. It's going to happen to all of us. And it's really important that we seek help. It's important that we give help, and that we all are part of a community of caring around teens and young adults. Second is a new program which we launched this year, which is focused on high schools. And it's really about all of the things that high school students, their families, the communities around them, and their schools can do to better prepare students emotionally for the transition out of high school. And we're in a place today where students are graduating from high school and they are not emotionally prepared. And the data is clear on that. We've studied that. And there's a whole lot more that can be done to give students the tools and resources they need to be emotionally prepared and to be ready for the challenges that will come. And this is especially important for those students that have already struggled in high school, that a thoughtful plan to transition care as they leave high school is in place. That program is called Set to Go. It's at settogo.org. And we are now in a place where we're starting to scale and do in high schools what we are most well known for, which is our work in college and really helping, and we're headed towards really helping high schools do this work. Our fundraising campaign at the end of this year is our Giving Tuesday campaign is to raise money for that high school program. So those of you who have already donated and supported us through the year and during this end of year, thank you. That's now where your generosity is being applied. The last thing and what I want to show you is, so we've been doing a great deal of research around what happens when a young person's in distress. And you heard some stories, and the story that we just heard from Arthur and Galen. How do you give help? What do you do? How do you notice if somebody's in distress, right? What does that look like? We've done a lot of research with 16 to 25-year-olds, and we've learned that almost everybody between the age of 16 and 25 will say that they have been in a situation where they know a peer or a friend is in trouble. And they try to help. They spend extra time. They try to be there for that person. And all their instincts are in the right place in terms of what to do and or at least to do something. But they don't have a language for how to have the conversation. So the conversations sort of don't really advance. They're uncertain about what to do. They're uncertain about if and when to get outside help, and they're worried about betraying what it means to be a good friend, right? And so we've learned over 2 years of very deep research that there's an ecosystem among young people where someone's in distress that we can help with. And so we went to Ad Council and to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and we asked them to join us in a program, a campaign, where we would really try to strengthen what's happening between peers in this help-giving way. First, at an emotional level, sort of like friends don't let friends drive drunk, which is a emotional call to arms or a norm, if you will, that I'm not going to let my friend drive drunk, and there's different ways I can do that. So the first is at that level of I'm going to help because I think someone else is struggling, and then to provide detailed tutorials on how do you help and what does that look like, and how do you get outside help, etc. So we've been working, as I said, with Ad Council and AFSP and with Droga 5 as the advertising agency to create a campaign that we're launching in January. And you're going to see it. It's going to be a very, very large campaign. I'm going to preview it here. You'll see it's a little quirky. It's a little fun. It's not coming at this, from a totally serious sort of point of view. It's meant to create a lot of conversations around mental health between teens and young adults. It's called Seize the Awkward. This is a rough cut. We're still working on it, so it's not totally polished, but you're getting a sneak preview that no one else is getting, no one else is going to get until it launches in January. So with that, let's roll.
Awkward. Do I look familiar? I should. You might remember me from such moments as here. Here. Or maybe even here. You try to avoid me, then there I am again. But an awkward silence can be a great thing. Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
Hey, you haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
An awkward silence can actually be a perfect moment to reach out to a friend and ask if they're okay if they seem down.
Starting the conversation now can stop something much worse from happening later on.
It doesn't matter how you say it.
You all right?
Everything's okay?
All G?
Yo, what up?
You all right, girl?
Oh,
You cool?
You bug and dog.
Just show you're there for them. Go on, Kelly. Seize the awkward.
I'm always here for you. Okay? Okay.
Find out more at seizetheawkward.org.
And so, right, it's fun. And that's just one piece of it. I mean, it's an entire campaign with a number of videos showing how those conversations take place and how to advance, et cetera. But we think it's a very important effort and one that can make a meaningful difference. So this, in connection also with our expansion of our Set to Go program in high school, those are the two things that will really be expanding and growing in the coming year. By the way, talking about awkward, our staff is leaving right now to go to go set up outside for the party. So here we are. We're at the end. Taylor's going to come back now, and now Taylor is the time that we're, looking for more music, and he's going to bring us out. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
This night is pretty cool, I think, because what stories do is they allow us to develop empathy, right? And so empathy is an important thing to be able to do when identifying someone in need. And so I'm just really grateful to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm gonna play a few more songs. This one is a tune called By Your Side, and it's obviously about being by your side. We were my wife is a little bit of a hypochondriac. I'm glad she's not here. She would laugh at that, but she would also be like, Taylor, and I remember one day I came home and she was like, we have to go to the hospital, babe. I was like, what's up? She was like, I think I have spinal meningitis. So we go to the hospital. And I'm like, there's a part of me that's always like, really? You think you have spinal meningitis? Come on. Okay, but then I'm like, well, maybe she does. Maybe she does have spinal meningitis. I would hate for her to have spinal meningitis and me to be the one who was like, no, we're not going to the hospital. So we go to the hospital. We get into the ER, and she's getting checked out and stuff. And they take her blood, and we've got two little girls. I've got a 4.5-year-old and almost 1-year-old. She'll be 1 next year. And so they're there. It's the middle of the night. Like it's late. The little one is actually, this was before my other daughter was born. So my older daughter was little. That's the baby I'm thinking of in the room. She's laying down. I'm trying to get her to sleep in the stroller. Anyway, I'm sitting there with my wife, and I'm trying to like doze in and out, and I'm staying awake with my wife, and I start like playing through this story of like what would happen if she died, and I wrote this song out of this moment where it was me kind of pleading with her dying self, like our like. I don't know what it is, spirits or something, like communicating with one another, and me telling her that her time's not done, and like come back, don't go into the light, or whatever that would be, and and just letting her know that I'm by her side. So that's it. Racing towards the brightest light, with a fire burning in your eyes. We'll feel your breath and heartbeat tonight. You find the light when the end is near, but your fight isn't finished here. So turn back and don't give in to fear, and take a breath of your life. Hurry now, you can't stop time anymore. Will you run or fight when the battle's at your door? And I can hear the sound of thunder. Begin your battle cry. I can feel the pound of your war drums. Because your flag's not white, oh, there's still fire in your lungs today. I'm by your side until the end of time. Whoa. And death awaits, but there's only one. We'll all answer when our time comes. And so we pray for grace and love while you venture through no man's land. I'll be there just to hold your hand. So don't give in to the weakness of men. You can rest, the light is near. Don't look back, don't run in fear anymore. Darling, I'm right here. This life is war. I can hear the sound of thunder. Begin your battle cry. I can feel the pound of your drums. Because the facts are not white. Oh, there's still fire in your lungs tonight. I'm by your side until the end of time. Take a breath, you're alive. Hurry now, you can't stop time anymore. Will you run or fight when the battle's at your door? I can hear the sound of thunder. Begin your battle cry. I can feel the pound of your drums. I can hear the sound of thunder. Begin your battle cry. I can feel the pound of your drum. 'Cause your facts are not white. Still fire in your lungs tonight. I'm by your side until the end of time. I'm by your side until the end of time. This is another song I actually wrote about my wife. I'm playing 2 songs about my wife back to back. She would be proud. I don't write very many love songs, but over the years, I guess I've started. This is a song called "Forever You," and it is specifically for me. It's about my wife, but more broadly, it's about just finding that thing that you anchor yourself to in life, and just finding the thing that completes your foundation. So, a song called "Forever You." Thanks again for having me, and we'll hang out after. Would love to meet y'all. And I've sailed across the ocean. I've spent many nights alone. I've wrestled with the monsters whenever I'm alone. And my head was all but empty. My eyes were all but clear. While wandering is tempting, you're the reason I'm here. But when you move, we'll move together. Forever you. I got something to hold on to. And when the storm comes and we hide from the weather, you hold my heart together. You hold my heart together. And all the days have gotten longer, the nights have gotten thin. The waves became a mountain, and this ship was taking water in. The sea carried me farther, where I could barely breathe. My message rang out over open water, and somehow you rescued me. When you move, we'll move together forever. You, I got something to hold on to. And when a storm comes and we hide from the weather, you hold my heart together. You hold my heart together. Oh, it's what we wanted in a savior. It's what we wanted in a wasted love. We wanted in a heart to hold, and all we needed was a home. So when you move, we'll move together forever. You, I got something to hold on to. When the storm comes and we hide from the weather, you hold my heart together. You hold my heart together. Hold my heart, and you hold my heart, and you hold my heart together. Thanks again.
I would like to welcome everybody onto the stage for a final bow. Thank you all for being here tonight and for supporting Jed, and join us in the lobby for a reception. Come on up, guys.